What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 762. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me online all the way from Denver, Colorado on his normal internet, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. No hyperspeed, gigabit, whatever for you, Luis?
No. We looked into getting fiber, and apparently our house isn't wired for it. So unfortunately, not yet.
We were talking about it before the show started, and they put one of the node things like right near Luis's house. So he's like, all right, I'm in. But then his house isn't quite set up for it yet. So he's going to have to wait. I have it. It's nice.
Yeah,
really for
I'm
uploading.
Jealous.
Uploading's the thing, because
Yes.
I don't know, you don't really notice a difference on other stuff, but the uploading for us content creators certainly matters. We're going to be doing a show today about Bloomburrow. We're going to dig in and see what the format looks like. It's week 1.5 or so, and it feels like it's week 12 somehow with this format, and we're going to give you our early takes on it this week on the show. First up, we want to say thank you to each and every person who supports us on Patreon. If you want to become one of those people, you can go to patreon.com/limitedresources. You'll get a thank you card and a sticker in the mail, and we also have a bunch of cool little perks as well. You get access to the live recording of the show, which we have people giving music recommendations in our chat as we were prepping. Producer Jeff was giving some of his favorites, and then they were throwing some in. It's really fun. You can come hang out. And the cool part is if you can't quite be here exactly when we're recording, you'll get a notification when we do go live. But even if you can't, that video of us recording live goes up on YouTube immediately. So you still get access to it, even if you're an hour late or something. You can watch all the behind the scenes nonsense that we do every single time. A bunch of other cool perks too. Again, that's patreon.com/limitedresources. We also want to say thank you to Ultimate Guard. They are the sponsor of this show as well. And, they make the best stuff in the game. If you need products to help protect your cards, your decks, your collection, Ultimate Guard's the place you're going to want to go. You can check out their products at ultimateguard.com, and you can pick up their products at your favorite online retailer or your favorite local game store as well. Thank you, Ultimate Guard. We appreciate you. One of the perks that you get that I mentioned before with Patreon is you get to submit questions for the Patreon question of the week. This one comes from Corey, who says, "Hi, Marshall and Luis. My friends and I have recently started getting together for flashback drafts and are really trying to do some of the best of the best. We recently completed an Innistrad draft and are targeting MH1 and IPA for our next ones. I know you guys have spoken highly of Khans of Tarkir in the past. Are there some other all-timers that you'd recommend? Thanks to the podcast. I've been enjoying it for years now as a loyal patron and will continue to do so." Thank you, Corey. We really appreciate that. All-timers, Luis, if you were to organize some flashback drafts with you and the boys?
I mean, Corey really did cut to the chase here and nailed the first couple, which is Khans, MH1, IPA. Those are like three of my top 5, I would say. So I like where you started. There's some, especially once you started to go a little deeper in the catalog. There's some which I think are pretty fun. I think Dominaria or Dominaria United, both pretty fun draft experiences. Good, kind of clean every pair is just like 2 color pairs, with Dominaria also having like domain and just like good magic. Like the gameplay is good.
Very deep, yeah.
Strixhaven, I thought, was a lot of fun. Like, I just think Strixhaven is just a very, very solid archetype. Same with Kaldheim. And then a Blast from the Past, triple Mirrodin, original Mirrodin, or 2 packs of Mirrodin followed by a pack of Darksteel are both formats I really, really enjoyed. So I would try all those, but honestly, starting with MH1, Innistrad, IPA, like Khans, these are some really smart places to start. Yeah,
I love those choices. I don't know if Corey is limiting the choices to, what we call like regular sets or whatever, but original Modern Masters was really, really fun. And there's a bunch of versions of that type of set that have come out.
Yeah, they've got MH1 here.
They do have MH1 here? Oh, yeah, I see that now. So those type of sets, I really liked original Modern Masters. That was great. Mystery Boosters, that was really fun. That format was really cool. One of the ones, there's 2 core sets that I really liked from the past that, they're not quite as deep, but if you're doing like a one-off flashback draft, core set actually has some benefits there where you can kind of grab onto what they're putting in front of you a little easier, where you might get lost in a more complex set like Dominaria, you might kind of be like, well, how many colors am I supposed to play? What am I supposed to do? And you throw something together. I really loved M13. That was one of my favorite. It was very well balanced, and it had some of my favorite mechanics in it, like Exalted, that type of thing. So that was really cool. And then if you want to go for kind of a different flavor, maybe a palate cleanser, you can go for M14, which is considered one of the slowest. It's kind of the benchmark slow format that we use. We talk
Elixir of Immortality.
Yeah, baby. Exactly. Had what were
Rise of the Eldrazi is another really good slow format.
Rise. Fantastic, and a good slow format as well. And the Modern Era Limited hasn't produced very many slower formats, and it certainly hasn't produced anything on the level of slowness of M14 and Rise of the Eldrazi. They're really fun. I mean, they really are. You have your time to kind of set up your battle cruisers and Rise. And in M14, it's kind of about card draw, right? I mean, they had Divination was like the best common. And then there was a 4-drop. It was at Sift or something like that. And then they also had Opportunity in that set. And you could just draw cards like going absolutely nuts. So if you and your group likes that type of thing, you should dip into one of those as well, just for kind of, like I said, a palate cleanser. But I really like the ones that Luis mentioned as well. Also, the Mirrodin ×3 or Mirrodin ×2 in a dark steel is also one that it's a flavor that you don't really get these days, where, back then they were like, well, let's make an artifact set, and they just went all in on artifacts. And these days they tend to be a little bit more in the middle, with the way that they implement things. So that would be another one that I think that Luis mentioned that would really feel very different from anything you could get now. Thanks for the question, Corey. We do appreciate it. Let's do our crack-a-packs here, as this will help us kind of set the stage for how we want to do things. The first one I want to do, it actually has 2 copies of a card that you mentioned during the set review that you really had your eye on to be a key card in the format, and it actually has definitely done that. So good call, Luis. It's Cash Grab. This actually has a foil and a non-foil. It's the 1 in a green instant. You mill 4 cards, and then you can put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand. And if you control a squirrel or return a squirrel card to your hand this way, you also get a food token.
I think that Cash Grab is an incredibly important part of a good squirrels deck, but it's also totally playable in rabbits or frogs, a little bit less raccoons, though it's still okay there. But I don't mind starting with a Cash Grab. It's a really good card. I do view it as like 80% a squirrels card, but that's fine. You can play it outside of that, which makes it a decent first pick. But I obviously want to go into squirrels if I see it first.
And you also want to go into squirrels in general, as we'll talk about, right?
Definitely.
So this is a fine place to start either way. Interesting to note here also, Luis, this is now back-to-back sets that we've had the 2 mana kind of rummage around, get something back green card. And those are traditionally very forgettable. In fact, they're often just straight up bad. And this is 2 sets in a row, with Rumble and Cash Grab now where this card's been like very good, like a important common in the set and one of the top ones, not just in its color, but overall. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe we're entering a new era where two mana get something and get something else is enough.
Yeah, I mean, 2 mana to mill 4 and then get the best card out of those 4. You can only get permanents, but you can generally get the card you want is a pretty good start. And then you add that little extra incentive, whether it be an Eldrazi spawn or a food, and you're really talking about a great card. So
yeah,
I don't mind it. It makes the games more, kind of more consistent and interesting. I feel like Cash Grab is a good card if you've kind of built to support it.
Yeah, being an instant is nice too. Next is Fountainport Bell. This is the 1 mana artifact. And when it enters, you can search your library for a basic, reveal it, and shuffle, and then put the card on top. And you can pay 1 and sack this thing to draw a card.
This card's fine. Like, it's a little better than it looked at first, I found. But I still am not, like, chomping at the bit to play a bunch of these or take them early.
Yeah, we talked about this being a primarily 2-color format, which is played out, and cards like Fountainport Bell suffer a bit there too because you just don't need them that much. Next is Dire Downdraft. That's the 3 and a blue instant that costs 1 less for each if it targets a attacking or tap creature, and the creature's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library.
I mean, totally playable, but
Yeah.
blue's not only the worst color. Removal, I think, is not great in this set, and I certainly am not looking for a reason to go into blue early. So,
Totally.
I'm there'd be a lot of cards before this in this pack, I'm sure, that I would take.
Right. And you know what normally happens when removal isn't at a premium is that the expensive removal is like out, right?
Yeah, it's basically free.
You
can get as many 5-mana exile a creature or enchantment
Right.
cards as you want. Like you could
Right.
literally just add 6 to your deck if you ever wanted to.
Totally.
It's just they're not that good.
Right, because they just don't fit the format well. And then the cheap removal it kind of takes the place of that, where it's like fine, like you'll play it if it costs 1 or 2 mana, it can kill a threat, but cards like Dire Downdraft definitely suffer there. Next is Intrepid Rabbit. It's the 2 and a white 3/2 with Offspring 1, and when it enters, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
Great card.
Awesome
One
card.
of the best commons, to be sure, and a card I'm really happy to have in my deck. I would rather start with Intrepid Rabbit than Cash Grab. This is clearly a rabbit card, but this card's so strong that you can put it in any deck that is playing white, and you'd be happy with the card.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those ones that fits particularly well in its deck, but it's just on rate very, very good.
I mean, in the mouse deck, it gives you 2 targeting triggers, which is awesome.
Yeah.
When you're playing black-white, like it can pump like a lifelinker to make your bats a little better, and it's just a great card. Like you're never going to be unhappy with this card.
No, I think the thing that stands out about it is Offspring 1, right? Like we don't see that very often in this set, and when you see that really, especially on a common, you're like, whoa,
with an ETB trigger,
right? Totally. Next is Rust Shield Rampager. This is 3 and a green for a 4/4. It has Offspring 2, which is kind of the sweet spot, really. Obviously you'd prefer 1, but 2 is good. And it says this creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less.
This card is totally playable in the Raccoon deck. Usually, like the Raccoon deck is one that's a little lighter on synergies than most decks. So it's not like you're getting a huge benefit by putting this there. Like maybe you have a couple cards that care about it, but it does fit fine in that deck. Outside of the Raccoon deck, this is pretty classic, like C- level playable, D+ level playable, where it's like not a disaster if you have this card in your deck. Not a card I'm like really actively looking to grab. So certainly not something I'd consider taking early.
Yeah, these 4 mana beef, green creatures have kind of fallen to the wayside. This one gives you a bit back with the Offspring.
Also, in this set particularly, there's just a lot of really good 4s. So taking a mediocre 4 is not something I feel like a priority to do.
Bonebind Orator is next. This is the 1 and a black 2/2, and it's a squirrel, as it turns out. And it has an activated ability 3 and a black. Exile it from your graveyard. Return another target creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
So you get a 2-mana 2/2, which is totally fine. You get to play to the board, and then you can then later exile it to get a creature back, and it ends up being totally fine. Like it's not a card that I'm going to take early or be super excited about, but I'm very happy to have this card in my deck.
Yeah. Agate Assault. This is the another 2 and a red sorcery.
Extremely mediocre removal, yeah. 3 mana to exile, to deal 4 and exile a creature if it dies, or exile an artifact. And I'm going to play the card if I have it, but it's just not a card that I would let set my direction for draft. So totally playable card. It's better than like the Orator, for example. But right now I'm on an Intrepid Rabbit, and it's not particularly close.
Right, and you would take Cash Grab over Agate Assault as well, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Uncommons. Oak Hollow Village. This is the green land that taps for colorless, or it adds green to cast a creature spell, and you can pay green and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control that entered the battlefield this turn.
This is a card I'm happy to play, especially since it's funny. The cycle of lands, they're all pretty powerful, but you really have to look at what spells in your deck before playing them, because you really can screw yourself if for example, you have 2 Consumed by Greeds, the black 1, they sack their biggest creature, and you can get a creature back if you gift them a card, that uncommon. If you have like 2 of those, you probably shouldn't play the Mudflat Village, the Black Village, because it's really bad to have a swamp that can't cast your double black spell.
Sure.
On the other hand, if you put this Oak Village into your deck and you just have all your green cards are creatures, and it's just no drawback and a pretty massive upside. This is at its best in green-white, but it's fine in green-white, green-black. It's okay in green-red. Their creatures tend to be a little more expensive, so that makes it a little worse. And then green-blue, it's also okay in, but the Frog deck just has so much to spend its mana on typically that I don't think it's that great. I would still take either Intrepid Rabbit or Cash Grab. Those are both totally fine places to start.
Calamitous Tide is the 4 blue sorcery. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands, draw 2 cards, and discard a card.
I mean, you're going to need something a lot better than that to get me into blue. Calamitous Tide is a fine card, and I would play it if I was in blue. You just don't want to start in blue in this format.
Yeah.
Like, unless you're really incentivized to do it. So we're talking like a nice blue rare or something like that.
Yeah. If I just told you it's a 6 mana blue sorcery, you're just like, that's gonna, that's gonna have to be upheaval or something. Next is Starscape Cleric. This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 flying can't block bat with offspring for 2 and a black. And whenever you gain life, each opponent loses a life.
A pretty reasonable card too.
Yeah, it's a good card.
This card it's good in black-white, of course, but it's actually pretty good in black-red as well, because just a 2-mana 2/1 flyer is good for that deck, and kicking it later is totally fine. I don't tend to play this card in black-green.
Okay.
So I'm not as interested for it there. And then blue-black is not a great deck to begin with and doesn't really want 2 drops that can't block. So this is a card I would look at as like a black-white / red-black card mostly. And that's kind of how I categorize cards. When I'm looking at cards in Bloomburrow, it's really important to know where it's supposed to fit. So like something like this card, like clearly it's a bat card. It's a bat, talks about life gain. You'd want to play it there. But past that, like it's also a pretty good lizards card. The fact that it's not a very good card in squirrels or rats is a pretty big thing to know, because you should know where you're aiming. It's easy to have 4 cards of the same color, but be balanced between 2 different decks and not sure. Like you could have 4 white cards and have 2 of them be really good for rabbits and 2 of them be really good for bats. And that's a pretty significant difference. And that could lead you to, when you're looking at whether to take a black card or a green card, it's like, I'm kind of abandoning these 2 cards if I take this green card, but that's just the position you're in, and you should just know that when you're deciding which direction to go.
Yeah. Last uncommon is Eddie Merc Crab. This is 5 blue for a 5/5 flash crab that costs 1 less to cast for each instant sorcery card in your graveyard, and it enters tapped if it's not your turn. And when it enters, you tap up to 2 target creatures.
So this is a powerful card for a deck that largely doesn't come together. So I'm not going to take that either.
Right, because this wants to be in blue-red, and that's been a place that you really don't want to be in the format thus far. Our rare is Jackdaw Savior. This is the 2 and a white 3/1 flying bird cleric, and whenever it or another creature you control flying dies, return another target creature card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. That's a nice one.
I would just take that. I think it's not really a bird build around or a flying build around. It's mostly just a 3-mana 3/1 flyer that when it dies you get a 2-drop back.
Right.
Just think of it like that, and that's a great card. Good in every white deck. So yeah, I'm happy to first pick Jackdaw Savior and still probably be looking to go into like green white or white black more. Not really looking to go into blue white. It's fine in white red too, of course.
Yeah, and that's a good example of what you just talked about, where you just broke down which decks you think that it should go into. And even though this one doesn't have like a huge sign on the front that says I'm a bat or I'm a rabbit or whatever, it's a bird, it will go into rabbits, no problem. It'll go into any of the white decks
and that's why this is a good first pick, because it can go into all those decks without any incident. Whereas there's other cards here in this pack even that lose a lot of luster when they're not like the Starscape Cleric. It gets a lot worse when you're not in the 2 decks it's good in.
Okay, let's do another crack-a-pack. Our first comment out of this one is Sonar Strike. This is the 1 and a white instant. It does 4 damage, target attacking, blocking, or tap creature, and you gain 3 life if you control a bat.
Oh, where did we land after the Jackdaw Savior? Are you on Intrepid Rabbit or Cash Grab? I'm just curious where your what your priority is between those two commons.
Intrepid Rabbit.
Okay, you do like the rabbit more.
I do, yeah. I mean, the early, I mean, we'll talk about it obviously, but the early take has been, I mean, you actually mentioned at the beginning, but it's just been like on board. Like I want to be on board for sure.
Yeah.
I just feel like we're kind of back to where we were 2 sets ago or 3 sets ago, you know, where it's like format feels fast. And I want to have cards like that get me on board and get me action now. Like if it gets me action now, I'm in. And not Cash Grab's awesome, but like I want now. What about you?
Yeah, I would also take Intrepid Rabbit, though Cash Grab is an exception to that. Like I think Cash Grab counts as getting on board because it gets you a food and finds you a good play to make or finds whatever you're missing. So sure. I don't really call this too much worse than that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would definitely take the Intrepid Rabbit just because I think it's a little bit better, and Rabbits is a little bit better than Squirrels. They're about the same. But Rabbits and Squirrels are the 2 best decks, I think, by a decent margin. We'll break those down as soon as we're done with the Kraken packs.
Yeah. Sonar Strike, where are you at on that? Does that get above the removal hurdle for you with the life gain or something? It doesn't seem to.
No, I mean, it's totally playable, but it's not a card that I'm that excited to play. Like, it is good, actively good in bats. If you're getting the life reliably, the card is really good. I mean, they priced it to move 4 damage for 2 mana, can hit tapped creatures, not just attacking ones. Like, that's pretty good. I still don't really want removal spells. Like, this is good in bats. In any non-bat deck, I would probably rather have a card that goes more towards my main game plan, though obviously you can just put the card in your deck and it'd be totally fine. I hope to first pick a card that sends me in a direction. Sonar Strike is a little too weak to consider it that.
Agate Assault, we just talked about. Next is Kindle Spark Duo. This is the 2 and a red 1/3. It's a lizard and an otter, and it taps to do 1 damage to an opponent, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you untap it.
Yeah, I don't think that this card works that often. It's obviously not, it's a duo, so it's aimed at both black-red and blue-red. I don't think it's very good in blue-red, and I think it's okay in black-red, but it's just not a card that I have any sort of need to pick up. If you end up with 1 or 2 of these in a deck that has some good, rewards for damaging them, and like you say 8 non-creature spells, then that's fine. But it's good with like Valley Flamecaller to deal an extra damage, right? When you tap it, like that's a sick combo. But
right.
It's just not a card that drives me towards either of these decks, so it's pretty replaceable.
Yeah, I had a opponent in like my first or second draft of the format play 2 of these in a well-supported deck. And I thought, okay, well, that could be a problem maybe. But then I just started turning my card sideways, and like my damage output, because they refused to block with the Kindle Spark Duo even on a 2-powered creature, and because that was their game plan or something. And they had turns where they were pinging me down with 2 of them for pretty decent chunks. But it turns out, a 2-power, 3-power, and a 4-power creature can outpace these things pretty easily, and they do run out of gas as well. So yeah, I was not impressed. I remember feeling a little bit of fear when I saw that, and then I thought, no, this just isn't a thing. And I haven't really seen them since, especially with blue-red, kind of becoming a archetype that people don't really draft. Our boy, the Sunshower Druid, the green 0/2 that puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and you gain a life when it ETBs.
This card is exactly what I thought it is.
It is.
It's good in a good frog deck and really bad outside of that. So
it sure is.
This is clearly not a card you're first picking, even if you're in frogs, because if you're not getting these at some point later in the pack, then frogs is cut, or you got kind of unlucky with how the packs were opened. So yeah, I would not be taking this card first or even like fifth. I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. If there's nothing else in the pack, you'll take it. But this is a card that by all means you should be getting 7th pick, because it's good for exactly frogs and no one else.
Yeah, the deck I have right now is a like all-in frogs deck, and it has 2 of these. And I will say, you play one on turn 1, and that's nice. Like, it actually does block fairly well, and it's not worth it unless you can blink it or, kind of run it back a few times. But like just that feeling of like I did something relevant on turn 1 that actually gets in the way is quite nice. Dire Sight is next. This is the 2 and a black sorcery. You surveil 2, then draw 2 cards, then you lose 2 life.
Yeah, I think that this is just not the kind of thing you can do that much of in this format. I mean, I'm not saying none of the card draw is playable. Some of the spells that can draw cards are fine, but what deck are you playing this in? I think Bath is its best home because Squirrels has plenty of ways to get card advantage, mostly having to do with foraging. And I don't think that Rats can generally afford to spend too much time doing this kind of thing.
Right.
So it's mostly, I would say, a kind of like a bat card, but even then it's not a card that I'm that interested. Lizards is just not going to spend 3 mana to not affect the board very often either. So,
and it would go into blue-black, but that hasn't really been a thing either. Probably because there's cards like this.
The blue-black deck would rather just cast the Mind Spiral, the 5 mana draw 3. And that's a way better card draw spell than a life loss card draw spell, even though it does send a bunch of cards to the graveyard for your threshold stuff.
Yeah.
But so yeah, Dire Sight's just kind of left without a home mostly. Not a powerful card.
Next is Sky Skipper Duo. This is the 4 and a blue 3/3 flying bird frog. And when it enters, you exile up to 1 other target creature you control, return to the battlefield under its owner control at the beginning of the next end step.
A totally fine reward for having a bunch of good ETBs, but at 5 mana, it's not a card that I'm going to be looking to pick up too early either.
Right. And you might want one of them in the deck, but you can pick these things up whenever you want. Banishing Light, the common Banishing Light, 2 and a white enchantment when it enters the battlefield, or just enters as it says now. Exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield.
Obviously a good card, but I don't think it's a card you really want that much of. And I also don't prioritize this one, honestly. My main problem I have with Banishing Light is just spending 3 mana at sorcery speed to remove a permanent is, I don't think, a very good way to go about things in this format.
That's right. I mean, the bottom line is, yes, you do play it when you get it. It does do the thing that it says, and it can be effective at it. But as Louise said, what if that isn't the thing that you're supposed to be doing? That's really the question that Banishing Light has to answer. And basically the answer is it ends up being somewhere in the middle because it does do the thing that it does well, and that is something that can be desirable. But, if you look at it and you recognize that you should just cut a Banishing Light for a good aggressive 3 in your Rabbits deck or whatever, you're going to end up winning more than not. So it kind of drags down what would otherwise be an excellent, we mentioned in the set review, but this card's, basically always been printed at uncommon. It's always been a very desirable uncommon as kind of a catch-all removal spell for anything. And they bumped it down to common, and it's still kind of in the middle of the pack. So, yeah, Banishing Light, playable, but not a priority in a set like this.
I just mostly noticed that when I was casting a bunch of Banishing Lights, games weren't going that well for me. I was never that excited to cast it. That's a lot of what limited testing for me is playing enough so that I start getting reactions to cards, and Banishing Light was not giving me the good brain chemicals when I looked at it.
Totally.
I'm just oh yeah, this card's not leading to that many wins. Interesting.
Yeah, and that is interesting because it does say a lot. Do you feel, I don't know if you want to have the removal discussion in the main part of the show or if you want to touch on it here?
Yeah, I think that now's a fine time. Basically, this is like other formats we've seen where when there's a lot of good 1-drops, when there's a lot of good cheap cards, removal tends to be less good. And that is something that's kind of been true of this format so far. Paying 3 mana to kill a creature is just not that good when there's a lot of good creatures that cost 2 or even 1 mana. And, there's also things like there's some amount of ward, there's some amount of, good combat tricks that can save it, overprotect or whatever. But Crumb and Get It is also really good. But I think a big part of it is just removal is inefficient against the threats overall. So removal spells tend to not be where you want to focus your early picks. You'd rather just be on the assertive side, and that basically is how it's worked when I played here.
And that's been how it's played out for me as well. And there's other knocks on it too. Even though Banishing Light, for example, trades off two things for one thing, but what is at the premium. So the thing that you're trading off here with Banishing Light is its sorcery speed. So you don't get to do instant speed stuff, which can break up combat or combat tricks or things like that. And then also it's an enchantment that stays on the battlefield. And the thing you're getting for that is that it hits anything, right? It hits any non-land permanent. So you're getting versatility. But
you can take a talent out. You can take an artifact out if you need to.
Right. But the problem in the format is that the thing that we're actually indexing for would be, I'd prefer to have it be more narrow, cheaper, and instant speed than this, right? So in some formats, in fact, most formats historically, you would gladly trade instant speed and the fact that they might kill your Banishing Light every once in a while, depending on the color pair you're up against, to be able to just take out anything, right? That would always be a trade you'd want. And here, you still take it. Like I said, Banishing Light is not a bad Magic card. It still does see play and it's okay, but it is not at a premium. And that's the big difference. Last common is Thistledown Players. This is the 2 and a white 3/3 Mouse Bard. And when it attacks, you untap target non-land permanent. Is this just filler for the mouse deck? I haven't really got a sense for how this thing plays.
It's totally playable in the mouse deck and fairly bad outside of it. So okay. I would view it as a kind of a red, white, gold card but also not a very strong one. So yeah, you're certainly not starting here.
But it meets the threshold where you're getting enough stats and you're getting the targeting thing, and that's enough for the mice.
Yeah, I think that you're fine to play it in that deck, but you're just not you're not that excited to do so.
Next is uncommons. First one is Lilypad Village. That's the blue land that we had talked about before. Taps for colorless, taps for blue to cast creatures. And you can pay blue and tap it to surveil 2, but activate only if a bird, frog, otter, or rat entered the battlefield under your control this turn.
Yeah, I don't think this card works all that well because blue tends to have more spells, and also the blue decks tend to have more going on that they don't want to spend a bunch of mana surveilling. So most of the time, I think you shouldn't play this card.
Okay. Peerless Recycling. This is the 1 and a green instant with gift a card. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If the gift was promised, instead return 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. And then, of course, your opponent gets a draw card as well.
This, I think it's okay to play one of these if you don't have a way to bring back stuff and you have a deck, especially like Squirrels, where you're getting a lot of cards in the graveyard. Mm-hmm. But Curious Forager, the 3 mana 3/2 Squirrel that forages to get back a permanent is quite a get better. And then in black, you have like Hazel's Nocturne or Bonebind Order to get back on a slightly better rate. So not a high priority for me either.
Into the Flood Maw. This is the blue instant. Gift a tapped fish. Return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, instead it's any non-land permanent.
I'm not too big on this. Like you'll play it in your blue decks. It's cheap enough that it's worth playing, but it's just not a reason to go into blue at all.
No, not at all. And this is though another, like, along the Banishing Light spectrum here. This is the same type of thing where you're like, this actually does see a bit of play because it's cheap and interacts with the board on the other side, even though traditionally this type of card would be somewhere in the mediocre space. It's a little better here because of that. Rare. We have 2 of them, actually. We've got a foil and a non-foil. So our foil rare is Balin the Haymaker. And this is the red, green, white 4/3 legendary rabbit warrior. And it says tap 2 untapped tokens you control to add 1 mana of any color. Tap 3 untapped tokens you control to draw a card, and tap 4 of them to put 3+1/+1 counters on Balin and against trample until the end of turn.
I think if you could make the mana work, this card is okay in the Rabbits deck. But that's the whole thing. Is I just don't want to be drafting fixing and spending time with fixing in a green white deck that has just a very focused game plan. So this format is really inhospitable to splashes. So Balin is especially bad. Like whereas like Glarb, for example, the Sultai Frog, like that at least is in a color trio that has more room for slower things and fixing. So like splashing that Glarb in a Rats or Frogs deck is totally fine. But I don't think Balin quite fits the same description.
No, Balin just feels kind of uninvited to that party. I mean, that deck is already one of, if not the best decks in the format, and it doesn't play any of the type of cards that you'd want to splash like this. So now you're putting this card in plus other cards that, reach into other colors that you would normally never play. And it's almost guaranteed that your deck is just going to be worse if you do that than if you just built it and put a couple of filler commons in those spots that are just green and white. The other rare is Cruel Claw's Heist. This is the black sorcery with gift a card. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an on-land card from it. Exile that card. If the gift was promised, you may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be used to cast it.
It's a funny card, and you should generally let them draw a card when you cast it, because getting to you're going to want to take their best card kind of regardless, and getting a card that you can play is generally worth giving them a card, because you're getting to play their best card and they're getting a random card. Like, you're getting to make them discard after looking. But that all being said, it's still not a card I'm really like super stoked about or anything.
What do you want to take out of this pack?
I mean, we just talked about all the reasons it's not as good, but Banishing Light is still the pick, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. There's nothing really else, right? You're not going to take Agate Assault over Banishing Light. Peerless Recycling doesn't get to that level. We talked about Into the Flood Maw. Balin doesn't really have a home.
No, this is, look, here's the advantage of Banishing Light. It's about equally good in all the decks that it could go in. So you're not particularly committed. And I think that is totally fine. And then you just hope for better packs in the future, because that was a pretty bad pack.
That was pretty bad. Come on, Jeff, step up your game. All right. Let's get into the format overview. Big picture, how you seeing the format so far?
Well, I think the biggest thing is this format is very assertive. I'm not saying the only good decks are beatdown decks, but if you're not on the board early, then you're going to be in trouble. And that's true of a lot of formats. I mean, this isn't the first time where we have seen that or will have said that, but I really am feeling it here, where on the play, you can get away with not having a 2-drop. If you don't have a 2-drop on the draw, you're going to be in trouble a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Like you are just going to end up in a spot where your opponent is going to be on the board faster and you're going to get too far behind. So you definitely need to keep that in mind. I think that the color balance is fairly off in terms of green and white and black. Like, all the Obzon colors, I think, are the best colors. And the two best color pairs, as we're going to go through them, are, green, white and black, green. So I think starting in green is the best place you can be, because there's just all these different good decks. And Definitely. This is kind of how I approach most formats, where you just kind of got to know what decks you're open to and which directions you're heading before deciding, or when you're deciding what your early picks are going to be. And then blue is extremely bad, and red is not great either.
Mediocre.
Like, there are fewer good decks for those to get, or fewer good directions for those colors to go in. The best decks are also very synergistic. Like, the best decks are a squirrels deck with all cards that reference squirrels and food, or a rabbits deck which is the same. So you really do, once you start going down a specific path, whether it be squirrels, rabbits, frogs, whatever, want to draft more and more of those. Like, that is the kind of thing that you get rewarded for. This is a synergy format. This is a format that each deck has specific cards it's looking for and things it's trying to do. And it's not to say that you can't win if your deck is a little bit more scattershot, or that there isn't like mid-range stuff that you can do. But this format very much rewards you for being extremely focused on whatever the sort of thing is that you're doing. So
yeah, it was. I got a text from Adam, and he was like, "Does this set feel core set-ish to you?" And at first I thought, not really, but then I thought about it and I'm like, actually, yeah, like the last core sets that they did, it kind of does, where, it feels on rails, like, just in the sense of, when in doubt, do what you just said, Luis, where it's like, well, I'm the rabbits deck, so I look at the card, and if it has the word rabbit on it, I'm probably going to pick it versus one that doesn't. And that'll actually serve you pretty well, in a vacuum. And it's very on board, right? It feels very combat centric. It feels, as you mentioned, curve out, using your mana, that kind of pressure. We still need a word for it, but that thing that you feel if you don't have a 2, a 1 or a 2, that this one may just get away from you, and you really may not have any way to come back, right? That's kind of one of the casualties of faster formats, is that the idea that you may be able to make a comeback, which is kind of a hallmark for Magic and something that makes it a game that's really stood the test of time, is the mana system and stuff can lead to comebacks occasionally, where many games just don't really have that built in, or if they do, it feels artificial. This type of format, and ones that we've had many times over the past few years, has that feel to me where, if I miss a beat here or there, like the game kind of just snowballs and then it's really tough to come back from. That is not necessarily a feature of Core Set, but the basic, I'm a rabbit, I'm a, I'm a squirrel.
It's a great introductory set. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to tell someone who's not maybe the most familiar with draft or any of these things, it's like, what do you want to do if you're the rabbit deck? Well, take all the cards that say rabbit on them.
And then just see how they go. Yeah,
and
totally.
That generally works. And I think to your comeback sort of thing, I think it's not a surprise that a lot of the best decks here are the assertive ones. So like the two most spell-based tricky decks are Rats and Otters, and those are two like near the bottom of the rankings when it comes to which of the color pairs you want to be in. And the decks that are all good are generally the decks that just get on the board very quickly. And the trickiest deck that is good is like the Frogs deck, but even that is just all very creature based. It's just put a bunch of creatures in play, flicker them, to get some advantage that way. But
yeah, and I like that. I mean,
there's something to be said for just draft all the frogs you see.
Totally. There is, like you said, that does make it a good introductory thing. It's something that people can hang on to, because what you'll see if you watch new players play, especially when sets are designed this way, which really is kind of ideal for a new player, in the sense that what ends up happening is you give them the guardrails and you say, okay, draft all the rabbits, or a good example would be draft all the mice, right? And they may read a card and go, yeah, okay, this is a mouse, I guess I'll take it, but they don't really get it. And then when they actually play and they turn their 3/3 sideways, and then it says, well, you can untap something. And they go, wait, does this target? Yeah, it does. Oh, okay. And then they go, oh, neat. So I get this extra bonus. And then it all kind of clicks together for them. That's a really nice way to show it. And it's on board, right? And, I always talk about it, that one of the things I love about Limited is the onboard nature, is the creature-based nature of it. I think that that's core to Magic's design. I think that it's one of the great appeals of Magic. And I think that it's something that Constructed can lose the script on as a format gets bigger and bigger. You tend to see fewer creatures on board. You tend to see combat matter less. You tend to see less blocking interaction of those types. And, Limited lives in that space. And this set does too. I mean, this is a very good example of that.
Yeah. So all in all, this is my opinion. This is not going to go down as one of the great sets for Limited. It just isn't. Like the mechanics are pretty, like the draft process is pretty simple. A bunch of the color pairs are just not that good. Like that's, I think, the worst part of Bloomburrow is I think the draft portion is pretty on rails. And especially with some of the color pairs not being very good most of the time, you end up in a spot where it's like you can ignore a bunch of the cards in the pack, and then until you figure out which pair you're in, and then you kind of get to tunnel on that. But here's the good part is I think the games play out pretty well. Like, yeah, there's going to be some games where you do get run over, like it's an aggressive format, and sometimes the games can be fast. But I thought that the games play out well, and if you can get on board early, the games do go long, and there's a lot of room for play in those games too. And I think that is pretty awesome.
Definitely. And, we should talk about the archetype breakdown. But as you mentioned, Selesnya, Golgari, so green, white, black, green, represent the top of the field. But, all told, if you kind of cut out blue, red, which is by far the worst deck, the spread's not that big. I mean, you can... even on some of the lesser decks, you're not completely out of the running, but I'll read them in order just to get a vibe. But it's green, white, black, red represent the top three. Simic, so green, blue, which is definitely the coolest deck in my mind. And that's the one that kind of threads the needle between being on board, but also doing fun, interesting stuff. Then bats, so white, black, then red, green, red, white. And then you get into the blue territory where it's blue, black, blue, white, and blue, red kind of bringing up the rear. But blue, red's the only one that's really like stay away at all costs kind of levels at this point.
And there are reasons to be in all these decks, but I think that you're going to end up being in blue-red and blue-white, particularly, a lot less than most of the other color pairs. There's just not that many reasons to do that. Like, why would you? It's kind of like you're presented all these paths at the beginning, and the goal is to win the race. You're trying to get to the end of the race. Do you want to take the uphill path or the downhill path?
Right.
It's like, well, I'm going to run the downhill path. I'm going to go faster. It's like, yep, that is true. So you really should keep that in mind when you're drafting. It's not to say that blue-red is unplayable and you should never draft it. It's just to say that why would you start there when you could start with something a lot more likely to succeed, and that's why you shouldn't start in blue.
And from a big picture perspective, that's fine, right? Like, we have 10 archetypes, but most drafts have 8 players. Like, if one of them misses, that's totally acceptable. And we've had formats you and I have really liked that had like 4 viable archetypes, with the rest kind of being not great.
Yeah, I will say that the blue as a color mostly missing is worse than just some archetypes missing.
I see.
Because
you do see that here.
I really feel that in draft when I just like don't want to first pick a blue card and I'm sitting here telling everyone not to do that. Like, that sucks. I don't think that's good. But that being said, I think that a couple of the archetypes not working, even a color not working isn't the end of the line. If frogs wasn't good, I would have a lot harsher words here. But you can draft blue. It just mostly is going to be in the form of frogs. It doesn't. And again, you can draft all these decks. I've had good blue-red decks. Well, I've had one good blue-red deck. I've had good blue-black decks. I haven't had a good blue-white deck yet. I've drafted it a couple of times, and it's always done poorly. Even when I started with Castrol, like the 4/5 flying, blue-white rare. But When I look at these, I see basically 3 distinct groupings. There's green, white, and black, green. So squirrels and rabbits at the top. Those are, I think, the 2 best decks. And those are the decks that I try actively to go into if I can. Then there's lizards, frogs, and bats. So red, black, green, blue, black, white. In about similar orders. Red, black is by the stats doing a little bit better, but I think any of those are fine if you can get into it. And then there's red, white, and red, green, which I think are fine, but I don't actively try to go towards them. And then there's blue, black, blue, white, blue, red, which I actively try to avoid. Like, I need like a 5th pick Vren Pack 1, the blue, black rare that makes rats. Yes, I mean, one of the rat decks I drafted that I liked is because I got a Vren 5th pick when I had black and green cards. And I just took that and then got another blue card and like, okay, I can actually draft blue black, and the deck was fine. Like, you just have to have a reason to go down that road. And so that's generally my draft approach. Is about the first, 6 picks or so. I'm not saying I just take the best card out of every pack. Obviously, what I have impacts me to some degree. But what I'm trying to do is identify which of the color pairs are open, like specifically which pair I'm going to get hooked up in. Because the rewards for being in the right creature pair, the creature type, are just really big. And when I get like a 6 pick, bushy bodyguard or cash grab or something like that, I'm thinking, yep, okay, so this is a sign I should be in squirrels. And I'll try to pivot towards that. Obviously, starting in green is going to be your best strategy because all the green decks are good. And it's got not only the 2 best decks, frogs is good and raccoons is fine. So green lets you pivot easier. But if I get a late card out of pretty much any of the pairs that is showing me, hey, this is a good place to be, then I will go ahead and take that and I will try to go that direction.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I was talking about color pairs, but you were talking about individual colors, and it's really very apparent that is what's driving all of this. Makes sense, but it really does come out when you see that, that 2 of the top decks, the 2 top decks are green based, and the 2 bottom decks are blue based. And the only way that blue gets out of the basement is when it's paired with green. So you've got green as the significantly best color and blue as the significantly worst color. And then the other 3 colors are kind of in between somewhere. But, That is what's going to drive a lot of this. So, if you're the type of person that pops into our show, after the set reviews and says, oh, what do they think about the format or what's up? Blue sucks and green is great. That's one way to put a blunt tool to this particular problem. But yeah, that is what's driving, these numbers behind the scenes for sure.
So let's take a look at the kind of best commons out of each color, because I think that'll also give us some cards to talk about, because I've pulled out some individual cards to talk about as well. But this is a good jumping off point. And looking at white, I mean, it's Carrot Cake followed by Intrepid Rabbit as the two best commons. And both those cards are extremely strong. They both fit very well, of course, into green-white. Carrot Cake especially is basically a green-white card. Mm-hmm. But, even Intrepid Rabbit is better in green-white than it tends to be outside of it. And they're both just very good assertive cards. Crumb and Get It, Warren Elder, and then Banishing Light in fifth kind of round it out. And these are all cards I'd be pretty happy to start with. Like, Banishing Light is the worst of them, unsurprisingly. But I look at these and I'm like, yeah, I would be totally satisfied going down going into white for one of these cards. Carrot Cake and Intrepid Rabbit especially. Yeah,
and the things that stand out here are onboard, right? The stuff we talked about. They're making tokens, they're making board presence, they're making multiple bodies, right? The two top commons both do that, and the fourth common here pumps them. So this is definitely a go wide type thing. The other thing is that these are rabbit centric at the top. They're not mouse centric at the top, right? They're not birds.
Carrot Cake is mostly rabbit. Intrepid Rabbit and Crumb and Get It are both
just
totally
good
fine
enough no matter what.
In mice. Yeah. I mean, Crumb and Get It is better in mice than in rabbits.
Better in mice, yeah.
And honestly, Intrepid Rabbit is a little better in rabbits because there are all the creature type specific synergies as well as the go wide stuff. But it's really good in mice. Like it gives you two Valiant triggers. That's one of the more successful overlap cards.
For sure. Okay, so that's white.
I would say bats is notably absent when you look at this, and birds, not even close.
Yeah, definitely. Birds not flying high here. Blue. So blue is interesting because, as we mentioned, it is kind of the worst. The currently top performing common is Dire Downdraft, the spell we talked about.
Dire indeed.
And then the next is Light Shell Duo, which is the 3 and a blue 3/4 with prowess and when an ETB surveil 2. So, that's just a sort of generically pushed 4-drop, right? It just has like stats on it. It's an otter. And it's also a rat, I think. Dazzling Denial, the 2-mana counterspell, and then Pearl of Wisdom, the divination. And you can kind of see, these are just sort of generic blue cards that are reasonably priced in most cases, but none of them have any particularly great synergies or anything going on. This is just kind of the reasonably priced does something that matters cards in blue, but they're not really pointing in a specific direction.
Yeah, and all these cards are just so horrendous. Like, I can't imagine first picking a blue common. Like, secretly, the best blue common is actually a Pawn Prophet. The hybrid blue-green.
Totally, because you can just play blue for it only,
But, okay. Let's look at black. Like, we've got Savor, the 2-mana removal, followed by Scales of Shale. That was a card I'd pulled out to talk about, but then I just saw it was here. Scales of Shale is extremely strong.
Right.
It's just such a good combat trick. It's obviously a Lizards card, but when it costs 2 or 1 mana, like that is just a really good trick. And it's frequently been the answer to like, okay, what gets them out of this here? It's like, Scales of Shale will not only let them win this combat, they'll also gain 5 life.
Totally.
Followed by Nocturnal Hunger, another removal spell, then Glide Dive and Daggerfang duos. So like the 5 mana 3/3 drain 2, and then the 3/2 Death Touch mill 2. Yeah, these are. I'm not surprised by what this looks like. Like, black's got a bunch of decent spells and a couple decent creatures. All these cards go into pretty much every black deck, with Scales of Shale being the least kind of transferable. Savor is best in the Squirrels deck because it can use the food better, but you're always going to play it in any of the black decks. It even gains life for like bats, for example. And these are all just like kind of solid cards. Nothing super exciting, but they're all solid.
Yeah, and it does stand out though once again that you see the prevailing wins in the set. Savor, cheap instant speed removal, Scales of Shale, right? Cheap usually. affects the board in a major way, and also is extremely good in a race scenario, which is something that happens quite a bit. That's the type of card that can straight up swing it back in your favor. Nocturnal Hunger, again, relatively cheap removal. And then the duo, or the Glide Dive duo, that's another give me something now card. If you're going to spend 5 mana, I want to drain you for 2, finish off the game, or put it up so that, you're going to lose next turn to this 3/3 flyer, that type of thing. So again, it just fits with what we're seeing here with, the format being relatively on the board and assertive. Red, best common is Take Out the Trash. Again, cheap removal, replacing any type of unconditional, more expensive removal here at the top. Agate Assault is currently the second best red card, but red sucks too. I mean, red is right. It's above blue, but it's not that much above it.
Worse than the Abzan colors for sure.
Very bad, and yeah.
Another reason the 2 removal spells are at the top is you've got Alania's Pathmaker, Roughshod Duo, and Steam Path Charger rounding this out. And all of those are pretty interchangeable creatures. Like Steam Path is the weakest individually, but is a 2 or 4 drop. Alania's Pathmaker is just a very solid 2-for-1. I'm always happy playing that card. It's good in any deck. But when you look at all those red cards, what combination you have of those, it's all about fine.
Yep. And that's kind of what you see usually when a color gets a little bit bad, is that it just becomes the generically powerful stuff that comes up, where, we were talking about green earlier, which is what we're going to talk about now. And, these some of the cards you see here are generically powerful, but some aren't. Like the best green common right now is Cash Grab. And Cash Grab is not what you would just look at as a obviously, this is going to be the best green common. Like these type of cards are traditionally not in that realm at all. And it is here. The next one is Baker's Bane Duo. And then Tree Guard Duo, Pollywallop, and Sticky Tongue Sentinel.
And part of the reason green gets so much mileage is even the commons that didn't look that strong ended up being really good. Like, for example, the 3-tree Root Weaver, the 2-mana 1/3 that taps for any color, isn't even on this list, and that's just a good card.
Totally.
Like, green and white, part of the reason these are so dominant, I think, is if you look at the top couple cards, they are cards that they're the synergy cards more than just the raw power cards. And that is a good sign for synergy decks in the format, with Cash Grab being great in Squirrels. It's still solid in the other decks, and Baker's Bane Duo kind of doing everything. It's a 2-drop. It makes you a food. You always feel good about it. It's better in Squirrels even. It's a raccoon for the decks that care about that. Like, it just all kind of goes together and ends up being, I think, a really strong package where the cards work well in various places and are intrinsically powerful. When I look at this, I also think like, okay, we've got a Squirrels card, a Squirrels / any deck card with Baker's Bane Duo, Tree Guard Duo, great in any deck, Pollywallop, really good in Frogs, okay outside of that, and then Sticky Tongue, great in any deck. And they all keep you open for all the green decks, which is really good. So
right where you want to be.
I've also been really impressed with Sticky Tongue Sentinel in general. Like Definitely. That card has just overperformed it. I think looking at it initially, you didn't realize how good it would be with Hunter's Talent, specifically the 2-mana fight enchantment. Like, it just turns Sticky Tongue Sentinel into a Flame Tongue combo.
Yeah, it just sits there and blasts everything. One thing I want to do, Luis, that I didn't put into the notes, but I think is interesting too, are the multicolored commons. So these are the hybrid cards and how they broke down, because there's just one for each color pair. So it's kind of interesting to see. You can kind of get a sense for which ones they pushed to try to get that color pair up on the rankings a little bit. So the first one up is actually Pawn Prophet. That actually is the number one performer for these, I think. Hold on,
I wouldn't be surprised. Pawn Prophet is amazing.
It is, yeah. It's the cheapest.
Part of the reason I like starting with Pawn Prophet is it's obviously great in Frogs. It makes the whole deck work, but it's also totally fine in Squirrels and can be okay in Rabbits. It's at its worst in Rabbits and Raccoons, just because Rabbits wants to generally have a lot of white sources. So double green can be a little tougher, whereas like Squirrels plays a lot of green sources. And then Raccoons doesn't really want to spend its mana on that when it could just be casting bigger creatures. But Pawn Prophet's still a great place to start. I love the card.
Yeah, next one is Head of the Homestead, so that's the rabbits one that makes the token. So that makes sense. The next one though is interesting. Again, it's Moonrise Cleric, which is the bat one, that the 2/3 flying. Whenever it attacks, you gain a life, and that's been a solid card. And again, you can tell that they pushed that one to try to get bats up above a little bit, because the next one is Corpseberry Cultivator, which is one that, again, has performed well, and you would kind of obviously put on the top end of this list. But, it ends up being fourth, with Pawn Prophet and Moonrise Cleric kind of jumping it in the rankings, if you will. Cindering Cutthroat, the lizard one, is number 5. Then it's the Junkblade Bruiser, which is the green-red one. Then the Mouse, the Veteran Guard Mouse.
Blue ones.
And then the blue ones. And then it goes blue-white, blue-black. And of course, bringing up the rear is blue-red once again. So kind of interesting to see Pawn Prophet and Moonrise Cleric pull a little bit above their rank there, but it makes sense, right? That is definitely an inflection point where the designers could try to push those cards a little bit to get an archetype maybe performing a little bit better. And Pawn Prophet was the most obviously pushed in that realm, and it worked. It's actually above those other ones. Individual cards you want to talk about?
Yeah. Crumb and Get It is a card that stands out because this card is actually part of why removal is bad. Is like you could just put Crumb and Get It in your deck, get the same result a lot of the time, and only spend 1 mana. And sometimes, of course, even better because you get to like a 2-for-1 them because it's so cheap, and giving
or whatever. Yeah,
indestructible is just so sick.
Totally.
And then Sticky Tongue Sentinel, we kind of mentioned that. Tree Guard Duo. This card just keeps impressing me. This is the 3/4 for 4. It gives a creature +X/+X and vigilance until end of turn.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I cast this card, it's just great. Like I think that you should not pass this card very often, especially if you're in rabbits. But it's still fine in all the decks. That's something I really value here. I like the talents a lot too. There's a bunch of powerful ones. I mean, obviously everyone knows Innkeeper's Talent and Hunter's Talent are just busted. Like you just put those cards in your deck and win a lot with them. But I want to specifically talk about Builder's Talent. So that's the 1 and a white. You get an 0/4 wall. Then you pay a white to level it up. It says whenever a non-creature, non-land permanent enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And then you can level it up again for 4 and a white and get back a non-creature permanent from your graveyard into play.
Mm-hmm.
Builder's Talent is I had this awesome deck that had 4 of them.
What? So they were triggering each other?
They were not only triggering each other, but I had so many of them that I was able to, and I had 4 carrot cakes. I was just able to go off really hard.
Oh, that's awesome.
The actual sick combo with Builder's Talent is the Bumblepot's Sharepot or whatever, Bumble's Sharepot, the 2 mana artifact Bumbleflower's Sharepot that gives you a food, and you can win 5 tap sack it to destroy target permanent.
Yeah.
It triggers Builder's Talent twice because it puts 2 things into play.
Really?
And even though Builder's Talent says 1 or more, this is 2 separate triggers. So they both work.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you destroy something, and then you use the third mode on Builder's Talent to get the Sharepot back, get 2 more triggers, and then sack it to kill something else. So that's a little combo to look out for. Builder's Talent also works really well with Blacksmith's Talent, which is funny because Blacksmith's Talent is another card that is really good. Like that card is just good. You play Blacksmith's Talent, you level it up, and then all of a sudden 1 creature every turn just attacks as a 4/4 double strike or a 3/3 double strike, even with kind of small creatures. Haste means they can't really ever tap out without leaving a blocker back if they're at low life. And double trigger and Builder's Talent is pretty nice. So I like both of those.
Dude, that is sweet.
Yeah. So very, very
Wait, so are you just supposed to take all the talents? Like when you see them, like build a mono talent deck or something?
Yeah, no, it actually does work out pretty well. The other talent I want to talk about is Scavenger's Talent. So that's the black rare one, where it's 1 black mana, and the baseline is whenever one of your creatures dies, make a food. It only triggers once per turn. But still, the first creature that dies each turn, you get a food, one of your creatures. And then you can level it up for 2 mana, and it says whenever you sacrifice a permanent, mill target player for 2.
Oh, yeah.
And that you can mill yourself to start with, which is what I think you do with the first 2 or 3 mills, assuming you've got like other graveyard synergies, which these decks typically do. But then you can mill them out because the third mode is, I think it's like 4 mana, maybe 3 mana.
It's 3,
at the end of 3 mana. At the end of your turn, you can sacrifice 3 non-land permanents to return a creature from your graveyard to play. it just means you get 3 triggers on the second mode, and
So
then because
mill
you sacked a
6.
creature, you then get a food. So you can mill them out really easily. I actually had a deck that had 2 of them, and it was just disgusting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because remember we talked about on the set review if this was a potential alternate win con, and you're saying, yeah?
Oh, totally is.
Sweet.
Where I think you'd want to start with this card is you want to play it for the first mode, which is an enchantment for 1 black mana that says you get a food each turn when one of your creatures dies. Because any squirrel deck will just play that card.
Mm-hmm.
Not every black deck will, but you want to start with that card being good, and then the rest of the modes become great. So if you can get that first mode to be good, which usually means black-green, the rest will be good. I bet you could play this in like a nice defensive black-white deck too. I probably wouldn't aim to play this in blue-black or black-red.
Okay.
But it can have some cool stuff going on. And
that is sweet.
The talents have been a high point for me. They're just cool decks to build around and cool things to enable, and I'm always looking for that.
And there's an uncommon and a rare for each color, right?
Yeah, the Bandit's talent's the black uncommon, and that's also an interesting one where if you can combine it with some other discard. So it's 1 and a black. They discard either 2 cards or a non-land.
Oh, yeah.
So usually they discard 1, and then you level it up for 1 black. And then if at the start of their turn or during their upkeep, if they have 1 or fewer cards in hand, they lose 2 life.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you level up the third mode, it says during your upkeep, if they have 1 or fewer cards, you draw a card. But the reason this card works really well with other discard is you play this and you level it up twice, and then they're always going to be forced to keep like 2 cards in hand going into your turn. Otherwise, you draw a card. But if you can hit them with a discard too, it's so brutal because not only they start losing life, you start drawing cards. They have to not play cards to stop that, so they're doing nothing for multiple
torture.
turns.
That's so mean.
That said, Bandit's talent is kind of bad by itself. You do want a little bit of support. But right. I've also been able to draft a deck that had 2 of those and 2 other discard spells, and it was pretty good. It still
and then a bunch of removal or blockers, or how did you build around that?
Yeah, you just have to have stuff to not die.
Okay.
But there's some cool stuff going on, and overall, I would say all the talents have some cool not all, but like a lot of the talents have cool stuff you can build around. Like the green build around one's really interesting. It's you take Hunter's talent or Innkeeper's talent, you put in your deck and you cast it. Things go great from there on. Like that's generally what you have to do.
Yeah, that's your build around.
Yeah.
you have to put a couple forests in your deck to cast these cards.
Well, I mean, those cards are both unbeatable.
They're just unbelievable. We loved Hunter's talent. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to talk about was Heaped Harvest. This is the 2 green food that puts a land into play tapped, and then when you sacrifice it does it again. I found this card to be really strong in squirrels decks as like this is the thing you feed your squirrels. I mean, going turn 3 Heaped Harvest, turn 4 play a squirrel, sack it. If you can get for 2 green 2 lands and the benefit of fulfilling a forage card, that's pretty good.
That is very good.
And I've had this card be something I actively want like multiple copies of in a good squirrel deck. It's a card that gets better the better you are at squirreling. So
this is your forage target of choice.
Yeah.
Outside of free food.
It is one of the ideal forage targets for sure. Carrot Cake actually works with that too. Mm-hmm. Carrot Cake is a food. So if you cast Carrot Cake, like the one that comes up for me the most is Curious Forager. That's the 3/2 regrowth guy. Mm-hmm. That's the one I'm most likely to play in the rabbits deck. But you play that, you sack your Carrot Cake, you get your rabbit, you get a card back. It's all very strong. So overall, this format, again, not the most complicated draft portion, but the games are pretty good. And identifying the open color pair is really important, more important than this and than your average format, I would say. So that's kind of your challenge in the draft portion is try to figure out how to get to the right place. But if you do, you can end up with a really good deck. Yeah,
the takeaways I think would be green's the best color, blue's the worst, red's pretty bad. The other 2 are in between. When you're thinking about what card you want to take, think about what color pair it goes into, and then if there's additional color pairs that it would go into as well. And that will dictate a lot of your early picks to make sure that you stay open to a few color pairs of interest. And generally speaking, try to avoid the non-Simic blue color pairs. If it's completely open and everything's there, go for it. But, if you're only getting to draft once a week and you want to try to rack up some wins, you're going to want to avoid those type of decks down at the bottom. That versatility really matters, though, when things get this on rails, where if you can open up a card that can keep you into multiple color pairs, that is a very valuable thing to have. So keep that in mind. Great stuff, Luis. I had to move in the middle of the week somewhat unexpectedly. And so I've done probably about half as many drafts as I normally would have done at this point. So I'm kind of excited to employ some of this. I just want to open up these talents. Now you kind of got me going on that. I think that those are the build arounds that this format is going to have to hang on to for the later portion, for in a couple of months when we're kind of looking at this like, okay, I think I've drafted rabbits enough at this point.
Yeah. I have felt that they do that. And so far I'm having fun with the format. Like I don't think this is going to be one that, again, is going to go down in the books as an all-timer, but I've liked it so far. I don't mind a fast format if the games play well, and I think the games do play pretty well here.
Same, and I don't mind a straightforward. We were talking core set kind of feels, and I like those formats. They're totally fine, and it's a little tough coming off of MH3 that had kind of a lot going on, but still, this one seems to be checking the box. So that's going to do it for the show this week. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to find us on social media, Marshall_LR and Luis's LSV, you can find everything related to the show over at lrcast.com. We want to thank each and every person who supports us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/limited resources, as well as Ultimate Guard for sponsoring us. Make sure you check them out at ultimateguard.com, and you can pick up anything, again, at your favorite online retailer or favorite local game store to find Ultimate Guard's products there. That's going to do it for this show. We'll talk to you next week.
So had a funny moment last week, watching the Olympics, because those have been on. I always enjoy them. I'm not like the most invested person in them, but I will generally try to watch them when they're on, and I enjoy seeing clips and stuff like that. I love the
Olympics. I've been watching a ton of them. Yeah, they're great.
I think it's really cool because there's all these people striving to be the best at their very specific thing for no other reason than just trying to be the best at it. And as anyone who gets good at Magic can tell you, that is the way you do it. Like, I don't know anyone who's truly great at Magic who didn't do it for any other reason than they wanted to be the best at it. They wanted to see how good they could get. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because we're looking at we were watching Katie Ledecky win. I think it was like the 1500, for whatever number of times. She, like, if you look at the top 20 times, she's like, all 20 of them, something along those lines. Like, she's just obviously like an all-time great. And we're discussing, like, I wonder what it feels like for her to win, like, her 10th race or whatever, her 15th. Like when Michael Phelps won his 23rd medal, like, how did that feel? And does it get old? And I'm thinking, like, well, I actually have like kind of a good perspective on this, because when it comes to Magic, I've kind of I've won my fair share. I don't really have anything to prove there, but I can tell you this. Winning still feels really good. When I go to a tournament and I win, I feel really good about it. When I lose, I feel bad about it. And it's like, I don't think it's different for these Olympians who keep coming back, even the ones with long and decorated careers. They want to win when they're in the pool, when they're on the track. Like, they're looking to win the thing they're doing. And I don't know if it means as much to them. Probably your 10th top 8, your 10th medal does not mean as much as your first for most people. I think the same is true for me, but they also mean a lot. I like, if on a scale of 1 to 10, your first top 8 is like a 10 out of 10, your 10th top 8 is still like a 9 out of 10. Like, at least for me, like, it didn't fade much. So it's like, that was interesting. I hadn't really thought of that comparison. But then the next thing is one of the folks we were with was like, yeah, but I wonder how it feels for these older athletes when the younger ones start doing better and start taking the field. I'm like, well,
Luis gets quiet.
I've got actually some opinions there too. No, I actually think it's great. As my perspective as one of the older Magic players at this point, especially in like the pro scene, is I like when there's newer generations who are good or great or potentially even better. And I think that is awesome. Like, look, obviously when people are comparing Nathan Stoyer to Kai's got to be like, and Kai's actually a very humble guy, but you've got to be like, this dude is 20. How could, how could his accomplishments be on track to match mine or whatever? Not that Kai would say that, but like, a lot of people think that way. I think it is great. You want the next generation to have that fire, to have that hunger, to be better, because I don't know, you want to feel like the thing that you have spent your time on is a worthwhile thing. More people coming into it is good. It's not fun to be the best of a dying profession, of a dying game, a dying endeavor. And I don't think any of the Olympic athletes feel that way either. Like, obviously some handle retirement more gracefully than others, and it's always a struggle, I'm sure, for basketball players especially, right? Like, when do you stop? Do you stop at your peak? Do you stop once it's obvious that you're much worse? Some stayed around longer than others. Some retired near their peak, and you look at their legacies, right? Like, that is a difference there too.
Very difficult for them.
Yes, stepping away and knowing it. And And here's the thing about basketball or the Olympics, like when you're slower than the newer guys, like you know it. Like their times
There's
are
a
faster.
number.
There's no debate. In Magic, it could be a little trickier. They can't make me stop playing. Like I get to keep showing up. Are the new people better? Well, who's to say?